Hey, howdy folks. This is Dave Brady from the Krakatoa Ranch. In this short film, I will attempt to provide you with my perspective, literally, of what I saw that caused me to grab my shotgun and prepare to defend my family. As you will see, I could not see much, which really points to the fact that I was on edge due to the threats that my wife and I had been receiving, and my gut instinct that told me that trouble was headed our way. On the evening of July 10th, 2008, I was outside preparing the barbecue for our evening meal. That day we had picked up our first steer we had raised back from the butcher, and we were looking forward to sampling our naturally raised steaks. I just finished lighting the coals when I looked up and toward the county roads outside our property. I don't know exactly what had drawn my attention to those roads, but I do know that I was on alert as earlier in the day and in the prior weeks we had been receiving threats from our estranged eldest daughter, who had moved out of our home about 6 months earlier and who had moved out of the state about a month earlier. This is the view I had standing next to the barbecue, looking out toward the entrance to our property. The county road runs east-west and our driveway runs north-south, curving to the east as it approaches our home. The distance from the county road to the point in our driveway where I placed myself with my gun, after I perceived a threat, is a little more than a quarter-mile long. In this recreation, you have the same view that I did. It wasn't that I could clearly see the vehicles. If anything, I could make out that there were two vehicles. What I could see was a dirt plume being kicked up by the vehicles moving quickly. After you've lived out here a while, you have a good sense of fast versus slow by the size of the smoke trail being thrown up as the cars move along the county dirt roads. These vehicles were moving fast. Even before the vehicle reached our driveway, my head and gut were sounding the alarm bells. I did not stop to think who or why. I just knew I needed my gun for protection. My office is about 10 feet to the right in this picture. I moved quickly into my office, grabbed my gun, and headed back out to confront the aggressors and protect my family. When I exited my office, I held my gun in my right hand and held it high above my head for the approaching vehicles to see. With my reach, that put the gun about 8 feet above the ground. I held the gun so that it was parallel to the ground. My gun and I formed a large T shape. I quickly moved to this position on our driveway. Because I had sensed trouble while the cars were still on the county road, when I reached my position in the driveway, the vehicles were about here, and moving rapidly, even recklessly, up our driveway. Our driveway is not in the best shape. It has its share of potholes, and quite often our kids are out riding their go-karts, or dirt bikes, or horses, or just walking or playing around. Not to mention that we have sheep, dogs, and cats that roam our property at will. The approaching cars certainly did not proceed with caution onto our private property. When the trailing vehicle reached this point, just after the dirt hill and just before the bend in our driveway, I realized that the trailing vehicle was a sheriff. When I realized that the second vehicle was a sheriff's car, I lowered my gun so that my right hand was on the stock and my left hand was on the barrel. This put the gun in a rest position with the gun pointed up and to the left, pointing to an empty field. I did not approach the vehicles. I stood there and waited to see what they were going to do. They continued with their advancement onto my position. This image is a little visually deceptive. It's about 100 yards from where I was standing to the bend in our driveway. The first vehicle, an unmarked white compact or subcompact, just kept coming forward. It finally stopped about 5 feet in front of me. The trailing sheriff's truck stopped 15 to 20 feet behind the rear of the first vehicle. I looked into the first vehicle and saw that there were two ladies in the front seats. I then turned my complete attention to the sheriff's deputy, who had opened his door and while standing on the floorboard of his truck leaned out behind the door to speak to me. The first question I asked the deputy was if he had a warrant. He said no, and I told him he was trespassing and should leave immediately. He told me he was on official business, and my response was, "You are trespassing and should leave." He asked me what I was afraid of, and I responded, "You are trespassing, leave." This conversation continued, and I just repeated the same thing 4 or 5 times. "You are trespassing, leave." Now, before anyone shouts out that I should have put the gun down and talked to these people, you should be aware that while I was deliberately calm in my communications, internally I was in fear for my life. I was almost dead certain that at any moment the deputy was going to pull out his gun and shoot me or my wife. I made absolutely certain that I held that gun steady and did not move it. I did not point it at anyone, and I never verbally threatened to use it. I just kept saying the same thing. You are trespassing, leave. The last thing the deputy said to me was, could we pull forward and turn around? I said, no, back up. There was no room to turn around by pulling forward, and since I was in fear of being shot, having my wife shot or my kids shot, I didn't want them any closer to me than they already were. Then they backed up and left. As soon as the deputies started to back up, I moved at right angles into the field to put more distance between us. The entire situation, the conflict in the Colorado prairie, could have been avoided. It's not as if this is the first time our eldest daughter had pulled this stunt of calling social services or the sheriff's department in an attempt to force us into compliance with her demands. Both social services and the sheriff's department had our phone numbers, and we were listed in the phone book. They could have called us and let us know they were coming. They could have scheduled an appointment. No. The social service caseworkers decided it would be a good idea to pay us a surprise visit. Their very words made in their full statements given to the sheriff's investigators, knowing full well that I owned guns for our protection. Heck, if any unknown vehicle pulls onto any property out here and surprises the property owners, they would be a fool not to expect to be greeted by someone holding a gun. We are 15 to 30 minutes away when we call 911. If we can't take care of a hostile situation ourselves, call a coroner, because we're all dead. I have taken feedback that I should have handled the situation differently, and maybe I should have. But I think you will see how I was trapped. We had been receiving threats via email and phone that we would never see our kids again, and that I had no right to be alive. Then I see two vehicles approaching quickly, and the only thing I am thinking is to protect my family. The social service workers, on the other hand, had a choice to make, and they made the choice of aggressively entering our property and attempting to surprise us. Well, they did surprise us, but we reacted the way country folks always react, defensively and armed. On July 11, 2008, I was arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree felony assault on a police officer and 2 counts of felony menacing on the social service caseworkers. I was taken to lockup and spent the night until my wife and friends could bail me out. Now I'm facing trial, and if I lose at trial, I face a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison on the felony assault charge alone. And for what? For following the Colorado Constitution. Article 2, Section 13, which clearly gives me the right to keep and bear arms in the protection of myself, my home, and my property. That constitutional protection declares this right shall not be questioned. Well, it is being questioned. It is being questioned by the Adams County officials who pressed these charges and are now pursuing my conviction. I created this movie for a couple of different reasons. For those of you who are concerned about how President Obama or Supreme Court Justice nominee Sotomayor are going to affect your personal gun rights, you should be aware that there is currently an end around your inalienable rights. Right now, all a county official has to do is see you standing there with a gun, approach you until they are able to claim they were in fear for their life, and you will be charged and arrested. I think we should all be concerned about how our natural rights, our God-given rights, not state-given rights, are under attack. The other aspect that I believe folks should be aware of is of how power may be abused to attack our natural rights. Yes, I pissed off some powerful people. I wasn't a complacent sheep. I knew my rights and I asserted them. If more people would assert their rights, I am sure they would think twice about leveraging the machine of the state against individuals and their families. The other reason is obviously self-interest. I need help. We are hip-deep in legal expenses, and we certainly would appreciate some donations to my legal defense fund. Please visit us at ruraljustice.com.